I, 27 female, was the only person in my family to go to college and get out of poverty. My family's from a small town, and we struggled a lot growing up. I got out, but it's hard because I make a good salary now, and my family expects me to share it. I still have student loans and bills to pay, but they seem to think I'm rolling in money. I also bought an apartment in 2019, and when my parents found out, they called me selfish and wanted me to pay for their expenses. I have loaned money to my parents, about $800, and they forgot they borrowed money and claimed I forgot that I gave it as a gift and said they didn't need to repay. My sister and I used to have a good relationship, but once I left for college and did better, our relationship got more strained. She married and I returned a few days before the wedding to help her set everything up. We went to the grocery store and she bought $1,700 worth of groceries as we cooked for her wedding. Her card was denied and she tried a few, but they were all denied. Finally, we stepped aside and she called the credit card company to find out that she had nearly maxed out her cards. She started to panic and checked her accounts and found out she had $200 left in her checking. I told her to check savings, and she snapped back that she didn't have any. Our mom checked her card and still had $600, so she said she would cover $600 and volunteered me for the other $1,100. I told them I didn't have the money. I did, but I didn't think my sister would have the money to pay me back. My sister demanded to see proof that I had maxed out my credit cards and I didn't have any money in my checking. And I told her I didn't have to give her proof. I just didn't have the money. She started crying and yelling at me that I was looking down on her for being broke, and she knew I had the money. I was just being stingy. My mom started on me too, telling me that people were staring and people were going to gossip about this, and I was humiliating my sister for making it seem like she couldn't even afford her own wedding. I had enough, walked out, and told them I'd had it with them, expecting me to pay for everything. I walked back to my parents' house, and my sister texted me, saying I was no longer welcome to the wedding. I drove home without another word, wondering if I should have put the groceries on my card to keep the peace. Not the idiot. You didn't make it look like she couldn't afford her own wedding, because she can't afford it. Setting aside that weddings are already grossly overexpensive, she clearly didn't plan, save, or budget well for this, none of which is something you're responsible for. If the family will treat you like a piggy bank, then removing yourself from the situation sounds like the best move. Exactly this. OP, stop playing ATM for your family. I'm still in awe at $1,700 worth of groceries. That sounds like a feast. I've discovered that people who never really had money don't understand that you just can't spend willy-nilly when you're in a better financial situation. And if several cards were declined because she's maxed them out, she must have run up massive bills and will have her income taken up with interest payments. Your whole family needs to learn basic financial responsibility and stop acting like children demanding everything from daddy. I'm stuck at, she had $1,700 worth of groceries in her cart and had no plan to pay for them? You can't convince me that she was unaware of her balance or how close to the limit she was. She loaded those carts into that store, fully expecting her sister to pay. She created the situation, brought on her own humiliation, and seeded the rumor mill. She should have prepared with a budget and guaranteed payment before placing one item in her cart. Absolutely. It was a setup. OP is the family's ATM. Your idiot family seems to have a crab mentality. When a crab is placed in a bucket, it can easily climb out and escape. Still, when you add a couple of crabs to a bucket, each time a crab tries to escape, the other crab pulls it back down, so the entire group suffers. You've escaped poverty, yet your family's trying to drag you back down with them. You worked hard for your money, and your money does not equal their money. They only care about themselves and their image. They don't have your best interest at heart. Keep those solid boundaries, and don't let them bully you back into poverty. My 31 male, sister Ann, 34, got married on Saturday. My husband of 7 years, Mark, 32, was there with me, and up until one point, it was an amazing evening. After the ceremony, Anne wanted a picture with all of us siblings, 5 of us, and their respective partners, so we started lining up. When Anne saw my husband standing next to me, she shook her head and said something about him ruining the aesthetic. Apparently, her plan was to put one man and one woman next to each other, alternately. My youngest sister, 18, who doesn't have a partner and was standing on the very side, offered to stand between us so she could be close and Anne's wish would still be respected. I thought it was a great solution, but Anne disagreed and told Mark to get out of the picture. He's quite introverted and tries to avoid confrontation under all circumstances, so he simply complied and told me not to get angry, but it was obvious that he was hurt and disappointed by being left out. Obviously, it didn't stop me from getting angry, and I walked away with him. I can understand that Anne wants her wedding pictures to look exactly how she imagined them, but the solution that my younger sister proposed was very reasonable. I congratulated Anne and her husband one last time, but then I said my goodbyes. When I was asked why we were leaving early, especially before taking the pictures, I said I didn't feel like our presence was wanted. We left before dinner was served, and I took Mark out to his favorite restaurant to cheer him up a little. Anne has texted me, saying that I was being overdramatic and making a fuss over nothing. Our parents have tried to remain neutral, but except for our youngest sister, the rest of the family supports Anne and thinks that leaving early was going too far, and that I should have sucked it up instead of ruining her big day. Not the idiot. Has your sister always been shamelessly moron? Or has the wedding brought out a new side of her? Anne did not get the picture asked for, and looking back at the pictures, your husband's absence will be abundantly clear. Don't blame you for leaving. Aesthetic? My goodness, the nerve of this woman. You didn't ruin Anne's big day. She ruined it herself. People with feelings are not props and dolls to shove around. The only person who was unreasonable and dramatic was your sister for souring the mood and excluding your husband and starting that whole argument. Yep, she expects you to celebrate her marriage while she disrespects you. Good on you for respecting your husband. If she was just focused on girl-boy order, bizarre, then she would have been okay with your younger sister in between. But she wasn't. She wanted him out of the photo. Why? You know why. Sending you love, because drama and BS like this is exhausting. My sister-in-law, husband's sister, 29, and her husband, 34, rent out our basement currently. They have the entire basement to themselves, with the exception of my laundry area. They pay $450 a month to be here, and 9 out of 10 times, they eat their meals with us as well. They chip in very little to food cost, however. They ran into hard times and needed somewhere to go 2 months ago, and we opened our doors to them, despite me being ready to pop. I had my daughter 2 weeks ago. Since they moved in, my sister-in-law will sleep all day. She works overnight shifts, and my brother-in-law will come upstairs to my living room around 5 to 6 a.m. and take over the entire space. He'll put the TV on and then sit there with his laptop playing video games, and he will not leave the living room at all until 8 or 9 p.m. My sister-in-law even brings his food to him in the living room. The only time he gets up is to go to the bathroom or get himself coffee. Now, he's very much a 50s-style Southern boy. This man does not lift a finger at all, and he has never so much as boiled water, because that's a woman's job. He doesn't pull that crap with me, but he does when it comes to my sister-in-law, who works all day when he's unemployed due to a back injury. Anyways, I breastfeed my daughter, and I refuse to be limited in my own space, so I will absolutely go into the living room and nurse my child. I make sure I'm not exposed. Darn near every time I go to nurse, he'll be like, "I don't want to see that crap." Think Southern hillbilly accent. Or when my husband gets home, he'll say, "She trying to whip her boobies out in my face again." And I'm honestly so fed up and disgusted with him that I snapped and told him he's not welcome in my living room at all anymore. And he can sit his stupid butt down in the area his wife pays for. Sister-in-law's trying to get me to change my mind because they don't have a TV down there. The plug-in doesn't reach his laptop, and sitting on the bed all day hurts his back. But I refuse. I don't care how much discomfort it causes him. He grosses me out, and his face makes me want to vomit, and he needs to stay away from me completely. My husband is on my side, per usual, but it's causing issues for my sister-in-law because her husband's just an idiot in general. Am I the idiot? Not the idiot. They rent the basement space. The living room is your space. He has no business taking up your space and then complaining when you use it as well. Actually, sister-in-law needs to leave this unemployed adult who just sits on his butt the whole freaking day, doing nothing, with the excuse of a new ailment every few months. People divorce for no apparent reason, but in such cases, they have to, but they don't. I wonder why. I don't think he actually has a back injury. Every year it's something different. Like last year, it was crow's feet. The year before, it was his shoulder. He just finds every excuse possible not to work. And he'll ride out an injury for at least 10 months out of the year, work for 2 months, and then claim a new injury. He's just lazy. Crow's feet? Like the wrinkles next to your eyes? An extension cable costs $5. If the bed hurts his back, then he can sit on the floor or buy a chair. This guy is overstepping boundaries. They rent the downstairs. He can at least ask if he wants to play a game or use your TV. And to give you crap over breastfeeding, he has to go. My husband and I have 4 sons together. I'm currently pregnant with baby number 5, and we had a small gender reveal party last weekend where we found out we're having a girl. My husband has 3 children with his ex-wife, 2 sons and a daughter. So although this baby will be my first girl, it's not my husband's. All the kids, including my stepdaughter, were super happy to find out the baby was going to be a girl. She's wanted all my babies to be girls. And finally, at nearly adult age, she's going to have a little sister. Yesterday, I posted my Instagram photos from the gender reveal, and in my caption, I commented about how excited I am to have my first girl. A few hours later, my stepchildren's mom DM'd me a long paragraph calling me insensitive and rude for acting like this baby was mine and my husband's first girl when he already has a daughter. I replied to her and told her I knew it was not his first daughter, but it was mine, and it's still a new experience for me. She counted that myself and my husband were sidelining her daughter for this new baby girl. I didn't reply to her after that. I brought up the messages to my husband. Although he took my side, he also noted that I did, to some extent, already have a daughter, and that he understood where his ex was coming from. Someone else also commented on my post, telling me it wasn't really my first girl. I love my stepchildren, and I have a great relationship with my stepdaughter. My stepdaughter and I have a great bond and spend a lot of time together, and I don't see that changing with a new baby. However, I didn't raise her. I met her when she was already 7, and she's only with us 50% of the time. So I could understand if their mom was upset. I said our first girl, but I didn't because I acknowledged that my husband had already raised a girl, whereas I've been an important part of that girl's life, but not her mother. Am I the idiot? I don't know. It seems like one of those things where, yes, you're technically correct, but it might also be super insensitive if your stepdaughter thinks about you in a maternal way. You didn't raise her from birth, but you still significantly shaped who she is now. I think no idiots here, because it wasn't meant maliciously, but you should perhaps reflect on how it came across. I watched a very happy couple where she raised and treated his 2 kids as her own. Then her own son came along, and she all but threw away the relationship with the first 2. You are the idiot, OP. It seems kind of suspicious that you haven't mentioned what your stepdaughter thought of your post. Have you talked to her about it? Is it possible that she told her mom that your post upset her? Is it possible that's why her mom contacted you about it? All you had to say in your post was, "So excited for a little girl," or better yet, "Our whole family's excited for this little girl to arrive." Exactly. The whole, "I have a great bond with my stepdaughter," while obviously omitting if you've even asked her how she feels is very suspect. If I were worried about being the idiot for saying something that could be insensitive to a specific person, the first thing I would do is talk to that person, certainly before I consulted the internet. My son just graduated high school, and we were paying so he could go on a road trip with his friends. He was supposed to go Wednesday, but my wife's mother and father got in a car accident. They live in another state, so we drove about 4 hours. My wife was a wreck and wasn't in a position to drive since her dad was in critical condition. He pulled through, luckily. We have 2 other kids, tween and pre-tween. We can't leave them at home alone, and we couldn't find a sitter to watch them on such short notice. We even tried our neighbor, but he couldn't do it. So that left our 18-year-old. He was angry, to put it mildly, but he did it. I told him we would make it up to him, and if he could ask his friend to move it back a week. They couldn't, sadly. We were gone for 2 days. He pulled through. My wife stayed, and I headed back. I paid him for watching the kids and went to talk to him about getting him on the trip. It was supposed to be 2 weeks, and they should just be a state over. He blew up about ruining his trip and said there was no point going, even though it would still be 12 days of the trip. He called me a jerk and locked himself in his room. I need another opinion, since this was an emergency, and he doesn't seem to care his grandparents almost passed. Honestly, you are the idiot. I don't understand why you couldn't take your kids. It's their grandparents who are in critical condition after all. They're at ages where you don't have to keep an eye on them every single second. It shouldn't have been that much of a bother. And what would have happened if he left already? It's also not your job to police his feelings about his grandparents. People are allowed to feel how they feel about people. Not the idiot. And the people who constantly answer, "He's not your children's parents," are exhausting and out of touch with reality. He wasn't parenting. He was looking after them during an emergency. When something like that happens, you're supposed to help your family. You're not an island. Your interests and needs are not the only ones that count. OP even offered to take him on the trip so that he wouldn't lose all of it, but his son refused. He could still go and spend 12 days with his friends. Instead, he threw a fit and skipped 2 whole weeks of vacation because he had to stay home for 2 days. Son can be upset, but he chooses to be stupid about this. He should have accepted the lift. Right? Only in an alternate universe where 18-year-old spoiled kids, once, trump an entire family's emergency needs. It's horrible. I can't imagine at 18, I wouldn't have missed a trip to help my family out. And to be honest, I wouldn't have felt like going on a fun trip if my grandfather was possibly dying. There's something wrong with this kid. Some of us have good families that we actually care about. Update. Am I the idiot for having my son miss his graduating road trip to watch his sibling? Well, he called his mom. Let's say it didn't end well. He said basically the same thing he said to me, and my wife had a breakdown on the phone with him, and she sent him the injuries and pictures of Grandpa and Grandma. He finally came out of his room and told me he wasn't going to go on the trip and that the plane tickets weren't needed. I talked to my wife, and I had never heard her that mad. On the good news, Grandpa has some feeling back in his legs, which was a huge concern. For people saying we didn't have an emergency plan, we do. First, my closest friend, vacation. Main babysitter, not available. Backup babysitter, not available. Last resort, grandparents, hospital. We tried to find someone, so we even asked our neighbor, whom I have a good relationship with. I had a conversation with my son about everything. He and his mom will have a conversation when she calms down. His friends are not a state over. They're about 2 down at this point and going to Mexico. They'll probably get to the border tonight. They were supposed to be going to California. He had his passport and everything ready. This is a mess.